Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Jenny Aiello, and this is With Love, Jenny, a podcast where we meet ourselves right in the heart of our vulnerability and authenticity. In this sacred space, where it's just you and I dive into real life, rich with wisdom and opportunities for deep healing. I explore what it means to truly connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something much greater than us all. In each podcast, I like to meet life right where it touches us most, in our tenderness, in our truth, in our struggles and our strength. So wherever you are on your journey, or whatever it is that you're carrying, no matter how light or heavy, just know I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to With Love, Jenny. And we are here for part 2 of just a really good interview. And if you didn't hear part 1, please stop, go back to the last episode and listen to that first. But if you don't want to do that and you want to start with part 2, it's fine because it's sort of a standalone. But I want to reintroduce my guest, and she is I'm biased because she is also my daughter-in-law, but she is an incredible young woman who holds so much inspiration and hope for people on both sides of the addiction journey. So Heather went through her own long, process of addiction with its own heartbreaks, as most addiction stories have, and continued to keep trying. And if you listen to my episodes of my half of the journey around my son's addiction, it was I shared how inspiring he was, that he just never gave up. And that's what it takes. And so we're here today, and I invited Heather to talk for several reasons. One, she's always so honest and forthcoming about her journey, and she's very good at articulating it, even though she sometimes thinks she's not. And I just learned a lot from her because she helps me to see what it's like inside the mind of what in the heck goes on that you turn into like a completely different person. And we're on this side going, what's going on? Why can't you hear me? Why can't you listen to me? Why can't you make the right choices? And trying so hard desperately to save those we love who are in the grips of addiction. So she's been very good at articulating what it's like and why that happens. And so we started that conversation actually this morning. We recorded it. It was supposed to just be like a one interview. Silly me to think we'd get done. We were well over an hour, and I was only halfway through my questions. So here we are. I have but her back. We're doing this this evening so that we could finish this interview. And, Heather, I just appreciate you being willing to be here and to help people understand the do's, don'ts, what helped, what didn't help you. Every addiction journey is different, as much as every addict is different. There is not a cookie cutter in this world on either side of the fence of this. Everybody's journey is unique and everybody's story is unique, but she is here sharing hers to the best that she can, what helped her and what actually didn't help that people might say or do, and why, what was that? So if you didn't get the part 1 where we talked about some of that already, you'll get some of that in part 2. But I want to welcome you back, Heather. Thank you for being so good about letting us have a very long interview in this podcast. So, as I said, Heather is my daughter-in-law, and she and my son have a beautiful baby boy, growing so fast. And, we just dove into life with Heather and with John, with them getting married and having a baby and just doing life, and they're doing so well. So she also wants a message out to anyone listening that as long as you're still on this path, there's hope. Don't don't give up on it, that she's really a beacon of hope for so many in her community. She's very committed to serving others in that community and pursuing a path of addiction coaching, addiction recovery coaching, and addiction, just helping in any way she can to give back to that community. It's a big passion of hers. So I know that she's going on to do great things. And so we get to know her now, and before that takes off. So yeah. So Heather, welcome. And I'm going to just pick up with our next question. And it's actually not about what it was like as you were in active addiction. And just for people to understand the lingo here, active addiction is literally like they're actively using, and to me, unreachable at that point. Once they are actively using, you have to get out of the way and set boundaries on the side of, at least on my side of the fence. That meant I had to just use boundaries and a lot of tools to help me keep my sanity while we waited it out, because nothing I could do would ever convince John once he's in active addiction. The only thing, and we did talk about that in the last episode, is to be incarcerated, to be picked up and put in jail. And it depends on how long you're there to how effective that is. A lot of times, the legal system doesn't understand addiction. And I know that we got really lucky. Well, it wasn't the last relapse, but we got lucky with a judge that listened to people, actually listened to me, appeal to the judge as well as John's probation officer, not to let him get out of jail, to keep him another 30 days until they could find a place for him to go straight to afterwards. And the reason is that a lot of deaths occur when they get in jail. They're there 30 days. Sometimes they get, their brain hasn't reset, but their body has changed. And then they go out and start using a higher dosage than their brain can handle. So a lot of overdoses happen after they get clean, which is sad, right? And so much of this is. But yeah, we had a really lucky run when John was in, with probation officers, and they really are looking out for you guys. They really do tend to want it to make it better. And it was really touching, the story that you shared, Heather, about that last arrest for you with that officer. So I thought that was the worst thing that could happen next to death, is for John to get locked up or incarcerated or sent away. And I thought that was the worst thing. Like, I just think I would die if that happened. And by the end of our journey toward the last maybe 5 years of it, if not a little bit more, I felt safe when he was incarcerated. I could sleep at night. Even though he didn't like it all the time, I was relieved. It was like he was going to just die on the street. So it's a bizarre way to rewire our thinking. And as a mom, I know that we're wired, to protect and grab our kids before they run out in front of a car. And you get to a place with an addiction where you have to let them run out in front of a car. It's there, you can't stop it. And it's very hard to change that hardwire, in our brains, just as much as you were describing the wiring being messed up in your all's brains. And so it's quite a journey. But the next question that I had for you, I have to pull them up, was that question of the other side of, not just what happens and what do you go through in active addiction, but what is it like when you get sober? And that was another surprise to me. But what does sobriety feel like for addicts in recovery? What is it, a day-to-day, moment-to-moment thing? And also changing the mentality that once they get through a detox, it'll be okay. Once they're clean, then they know, we don't have to worry anymore. Like that was the celebration point. And what I found is that's where your all's work really starts. So what's that like?
So, when I'd say there's this period of time, like whenever I would first, I mean, detoxing is absolutely terrible. But once getting past that, there's like, for me, I felt very hopeful. Like my body finally felt like it was my own again. And having that kind of cloud over, like being hooked on, especially opiates, and it just being such a slave to it with the withdrawals and everything like that, the feeling of being able to wake up and not have to be extremely sick and having to do things you don't want to do just to be able to feel okay. Because, towards the end, you're not even getting high anymore. So just feeling, having to go through all that just to feel okay. Not having that is a very freeing feeling. So it's like there's this period of time where it's like almost like a pink cloud, but then you start to realize, oh, well, now I'm getting all my feelings back. And now I have to sit through this uncomfortable feeling. And sometimes it's like the very first cold you get, like, just feels absolutely terrible. And learning to, like, that can be very hard. So, staying clean without doing any kind of work can be very miserable. So with this go around in recovery now, there was like a year where I'd kind of quit going to meetings. I was pregnant, I just felt, I don't know, I just quit going for a while. And I ended up feeling very kind of off and just almost like emotionally or spiritually dead. And I felt like I was missing something. Like I'm still having to sit with my character defects and all this terrible flawed thinking and intrusive thoughts, all the things. And so it's like not doing any kind of work on myself. It gets very uncomfortable. But the recovery part, where I started going to meetings again and started really doing work on myself, like it gets messy. Like there are some downs to it, having to sit through feeling all of this stuff. But it is such an empowering and uplifting feeling to be able to get through it clean and feeling like I'm living with integrity and in spiritual principles that I can be proud of. And it even feels weird saying that out loud because I do beat myself up so much, but I have to look at where I was versus where I am now. And even on those days where I feel like I'm just completely getting it wrong, like I'm still actively every day trying to live with integrity and living in these spiritual principles that, we learn through the steps and through different programs or whatever. And so it feels messy, but it's a good kind of messy because I'm able to trust my instincts more because my brain's not wired to keep telling me to get high. But those thoughts never go away completely. I'm able to think it through, whenever something comes up and I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I should just go get high. Like I'm able to see on the other side of that and think, well, no, Heather, that is such a stupid, ridiculous decision. And then I go through this phase of getting mad at myself for even thinking that. And then it's like this little
Mm-hmm.
thought process, but then I move
Mm-hmm.
on past it and it's fine,
Yeah.
but it's like it never completely goes away. But as long as I'm continuously doing work on myself and trying to be aware of myself, then I can process those things and get through them. Because just because you get clean and just because you're doing work on yourself doesn't mean life doesn't show up. Life still shows up. Things still get stressful and messy and overwhelming. I get overstimulated all the time because I like always have way too much going on at one time. But being able to process it and all of that, like it's such a good feeling. And having a bed in my own home where I feel safe and I don't have to be watching over my shoulder and I don't go hungry. I can be someone that people trust and depend on, and people don't have to watch their wallets around me, and those are all just such amazing things. And it makes it so worth going through the painful stuff clean and not numbing myself. Like all of that is just, I would take the most stressful day clean over my best day high any day, just because I feel like I can live with myself now and I can love myself. And knowing that my kids know that if they need me, I'm here. And that's just huge for me. For my kids to be able to trust me, that's a big deal for me. So,
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's good. You just said so much that man, I'm like, some of us take some of those things for granted and how it feels to be home in your own bed and to be able to have food to eat and things that we don't think about. But how grateful, and that it sounds like you live in that gratitude as part of your recovery, just to always take time to be mindful of that, count those blessings. And I know mindfulness is a big part of it from what I've learned on my side of the fence, but also watching John and knowing that was always recommended. A lot of people in recovery learn to meditate, learn to just get that centered place of remembering your wholeness, remembering, your worthiness, and walking out into that world, like, with that remembrance, which is really important. So I'm glad that you do that. So,
well, I haven't always gotten it right. It's definitely a process because you have to learn how to be an adult, so
yeah,
it's like I'm
yeah,
trying to
it's
figure all
something.
this stuff out, but it is very freeing experience. So,
Yeah, it's something interesting to know. Little fact, if you all don't know that as listeners, is that when at the age of someone, when they first began to use an actual substance that hits the brain, hits that switch to be addicted, whatever age that started is where the emotional development stops. As long as you're using, you've got to get clean long enough for that to start to progress again. And we found that where there was this huge gap in, John's actual chronological age didn't match his level of functioning, of knowing how to function and to manage himself. And we couldn't get him to a place where he was in one place long enough or clean long enough to actually develop that. So it's understanding that if you've been on this journey and you're like wondering why, that's what that is. And just brain development it's just a little fact that we learned along the way, like, okay, that makes sense, because you haven't learned to grow up yet. It was like there was so many things that were still, a teenager. And so, yeah. So one of the things that he shared with me about what sobriety felt like for him was what you described at the beginning. At first, it was chaotic. It did not feel good because you're having to now feel, and you're having to feel your shame because you're looking back at like the wreck the tornado went through, and you just get up and look at the wreckage, of your life, of relationships, friendships, all kinds of things. And so the feelings about that are hard to feel. And that's why I think that community is so important, because you have a place to work through that people understand, what that's about. And but something he said is, Mom, like, people think that once I'm sober, I'm going to feel better, but I used to feel normal. And when I'm sober, I don't feel normal. I didn't feel that at first. And so it sounds like what you're sharing is, yeah, it's messy for a little while, but when you get connected to that reality that, hey, I'm not sleeping on the street, I'm doing way better here, and I'm not looking over my shoulder. Those are all things that life brings that, isn't a fun way to live. It really
mm-mm,
isn't.
no.
Nobody really wants that lifestyle, I don't think. So just the drug, but not that lifestyle. So my next question is, what are some of the most helpful things that people around you did or said while you were in active addiction, but also in early recovery? And, like, were there things that were helpful for you?
Um, I'd say as far as like an active addiction, um, like my mom just like I tried not to ask too much of her when I was in active addiction and on the streets, but like if I was hungry and she would bring me something to eat. But like as far as support wise, when I was in this like weird gray area where I wasn't like completely full blown IV drug use again, but like just kind of misusing prescription medications, but still somewhat holding it together, but I was not holding it together like I was in my head. But and like people, like I would go to church with my mom a lot, and people could tell that things were just not completely right with me. And my mom would talk about different stressful situations to people that she trusted in at church. And so, people knew they just knew. And so, but when I would go with her, nobody ever said anything about it. Like they just loved on me. They just gave me a hug, told me how great it was to see me, and I could feel that was genuine. And so like that lack of judgment, and just the open arms and love, whenever I was in prison. So, well, when I was missing, my mom said that they had like a special prayer at church one night, and like a lot of people got together to pray because I was missing, and there were people that were looking for me and different things like that. So, like the people that watched me grow up in that church prayed a lot for me. And then whenever I got out of that situation and I went to prison, I got a lot of cards, a lot of letters, just all kinds of stuff
Mm.
from people. And like there were probably two or three people that I would literally get mail from every single week. And it was just not even anything
Mm.
fancy. Like one of my mom's friends, it was just like e-card that she found, and she would just send them in that. But just knowing that these people are still thinking about me and praying for me, whatever my beliefs were at the time, just knowing that they were thinking about me helped me to have hope that if they still see that person and like the dark person that I turned into in my active addiction, and they still loved me, then maybe there's still hope. So that helped a lot while I was in prison. Getting to talk to my mom helped a lot, especially considering I was in there for stealing her credit cards, but being able to talk to her and try to move past that helped a lot. I would say in early recovery, I went to a house, like a sober living house that had structure. Like there's still a lot of freedom in the one that I went to. Like you had to go get a job and pay your own rent and bills and stuff in the house. But I had to go to NA meetings and, take drug tests and things like that. So that structure helped me out a lot. And really, the NA meetings helped me out so much. And that goes back to that community of people that understand what you're going through, so that you don't just sit in it and feel like I feel like whenever I sit in it, I start to victimize myself more. And then I start
Mm.
creating these scenarios in my head that aren't reality. And so being able to talk about that to other people that understand helps me to realize I'm not unique in my suffering, and that this is completely normal and I can get through it because all these other people have. And if they can do it, then I can too. So, yeah, that's what I think helped me the most. And then I guess just continued support from my mom. I mean, and when I say support, I don't even mean like just paying for my drugs or doing any of this stuff. Just she just never gave up, and a lot of people told her to. A couple of her closest friends told her she should just stop talking to me, and she stopped enabling me, but she never stopped talking to me, and she never stopped loving me, and I knew that. So
Yeah, I know that it's so easy to get there on this journey. It's so easy. It's so hard that I think some people just have to withdraw and just, and even for people watching it, it's like too much.
yeah,
But really and truly, like, I don't know. I could never give up. And even our own family was hurting so bad. And it was hard because my other kids were being exposed to that, but I couldn't give up. And I was learning, right? I didn't get it right either. I was having to learn the do's and don'ts? Where's the boundaries? And, some nights we got a call one time, and it was like in the middle of the night, and this man said he had our son's cell phone in his hand, and he looked in his contacts for mom and he called the mom, and he said, he's here on a bench, and it was very cold, and he said, I feel like he's going to freeze to death. And I gave him my blanket. One of the things that surprised me about that, not that he did that, because they're usually all very, they help each other out on the street, from what I understand. But Bob got up and drove over, and we brought him back, and he was close to hypothermia. So we were glad that we got him home and warmed him up. But, at times like that, do you take the call? Do you just go, I can't do this one more night? It was hard, but then I would have laid awake all night wondering what he wanted, if he needed something. So it was good that I did. But then the family would be like, why is he back in here? He's still clearly using. And sometimes I made the call of, it's not best for him, for me to enable him this way, but it's best for me, because sometimes I just couldn't take it anymore. And I got my own resilience over time on what the do's and don'ts were and why. And it would be hard, because I know if you were like this, John was a very good at convincing us of what would happen if, it was like, and so he kind of knew us so well. He knew exactly how to get what he wanted. And I should have always known not to fall for that, because the John I know wouldn't have done that. He would have never even asked. So it's a tough journey, definitely, to navigate, but it's good to hear you say that, to know that nobody, there were still people who saw the good in you, and you could hold on to that, because cutting through the shame of, that lifestyle and not being able to pull yourself out of that at the time, or wanting even to, that's the thing that it felt like for me, that you just always want to make sure that they know when you're ready. We always said, when you're ready to get help, we're right here. Mm-hmm. And we're here if, you want to talk, but we definitely had to set some other boundaries, just to protect ourselves and the rest of our family. It just took me a little longer to figure that out than most.
Yeah. One other thing, we talked about this on the first one, when I finally got out of that situation and it was time for me to have to face the music and go to jail, like my mom making that hard call for the cops to come and get me, that was one of the best things that she ever did for me. So that was something that probably saved my life. I was not okay, would have died if I'd have been out there much longer. And so yeah, I mean, as much as I'm not a big fan of necessarily the prison system and jail systems and things, like, that's what I needed at the time. And I could not do that for myself. So that really saved me.
Yeah, I actually joked with John, like, if I could just put bars on your bedroom window and in front of your bedroom door and the bathroom door, so you could go to the bathroom, have a shower, and a little slot for me to slot a tray of food under, I would do that for him to be imprisoned here, in the comfort of home. I wish that our society would, because I don't remember the statistic, but almost, I think 80% or more of people imprisoned are drug charges. That's from drug use and drug charges. And not all of them are, really wanting to get back to their integrity. Not everybody's good in that world, as you experienced. But I just kind of feel like if that's what's needed to get that to stop, to get you to stop, John still said that, that's what it took to get me to stop. And if that's the case, then why not convert our detention centers or something, convert them, or build one just for people in recovery to do their time, but not with the criminal charge of it, but give them the help. because even though they offer classes and they do seem to have some good programs within.
Yeah. Well, it's not everywhere either. Like when I was in Raleigh, absolutely terrible. If I would have had to spend my whole prison bed in Raleigh, it's the way it was at the time with COVID going on and all that. That was, I mean, I still needed the break, but I still like whenever I got dropped down to like the open custody or whatever, like where you're like minimum, sorry, the minimum custody. When I went to the minimum custody camp, that was completely different. You know, the way the
Mhm.
building was set up was more like a treatment center. That's where they had the drug classes at. And you had more freedom to feel like a human and you could actually go outside and there's just different things. But I'd met the drug counselor there who since I was in Swananoa, he was a recovering addict in Asheville, and he would come to the prison to do the drug classes. So that's how I found out about Asheville and where I ended up moving to when I got out of prison. So,
Mhm.
so my journey in prison could have very well gone differently, as it does for a
Yeah.
lot of people. But I just had, a good experience at Swananoa and was able to really do some reflecting and all of that. But
Yeah. Yeah. So they're not all created equal.
no.
That's what I wish we could work on, while we're trying to control, the influx of all the drugs and, they're out there. But if we could just help everybody know they had a positive option, in the incarceration, even then you're going to not want it. Nobody really wants to have to do
Mm-mm.
that, but it could be more pleasant. And what do you say to people when they just think that you did all these bad things and now everybody's happy because you went to a recovery program, and everybody's opinion of some of these, they see advertisements for the ones that are the very plush, nice recovery programs. So it's like, what the heck? It's like, now you get a month vacation, and that's how people will look at that. What do you say to them about what goes on in a 30-day recovery program? What all can get accomplished there? And
So, I mean, in the treatment center, there's drug counselors, more than just the one at the prison that I was at, and not even everybody didn't even get in that class. It was very limited. It depended on just when you got there, and you could get transferred out. So, not everybody got that. The treatment center, you again, you're treated more like a human. You have more freedom, and they have good ones, have really good counselors, especially the peer supports who have people that are people with lived experience in substance use disorder who have taken some classes and are facilitating support groups. So I get a lot out of the support groups myself. So being able to be in a room with someone facilitating a group where we can kind of talk about the things we're experiencing, trying to detox and start. I mean, it's just kind of the tip of the iceberg on the work, but at least get some sort of a foundation of understanding, for one, what we're going through, because not everybody understands what's even going on with their body and why addiction does what it does. And they teach you these things in treatment centers. And like, so under having a little bit more of an understanding about what your body and your mind are going through with addiction kind of help you a little bit. And there's they do like cognitive behavioral therapy, learning to try to cope with your emotions so that you don't have to get high every time you feel depressed or sad or whatever. So there's just a lot of tools and coping skills that you can learn because, like you had mentioned earlier, most of us, when we start using, we kind of stop developing emotionally or mentally. So we're not very good at processing how we feel, obviously. So learning those tools really, really help a lot. There was a lot of things that I learned in treatment. And even though I might have relapsed, they were still things that I learned and it planted that seed so that I knew that there was another way to live.
cool. Yeah. And that seems like it would be an important reality check to get just kind of a seed planted in the back of your mind. Like, there is always another way I could be living besides this. And there's people out there who love me enough, to give me that chance. Seems like two really important strongholds
Yeah.
to give you guys as you're
Yeah.
going through it.
I did well. Like whenever I went to treatment the first time, I did stay clean for a couple years after that. It was whenever I stopped doing the work like, so I learned so much when I did go to treatment, but then as soon as I give up on doing the work, things start going bad again every time.
Yeah. And, I don't know what your treatment journey, how long all that over the years, what happened, but I know for John, he was in treatment some places twice, like he was a return guest, and all kinds of there's so many different treatment options out there. And at some point, he just felt like it's all consuming, right? It's like it's all he could do was like go to meetings, go to, classes, go to treatment, think about this, read that, do your inventory. It was all consuming and he would need a break from it. But that break always led to a very quick relapse. And I was always kind of curious, like, did he relapse because he took a break from it all? Or, did he create I need a break so he could relapse? It's hard to know, but I never asked him that question, but I could see it made sense because it was all consuming. It was exhausting. And it's like, that's all I get to think about. And I'm like, it's like a reverse brainwashing that has to happen. You can't
Yeah.
really let up because the addict brain will quickly take the wheel again. And
Yeah.
so is there anything that you would want people who are loving an addict somewhere out there that you want them to know didn't help you either during active addiction or early recovery?
Well, I guess let me start by saying, like, I don't blame anyone who is trying to love an addict for what they may or may not do right or wrong or whatever, because I don't think there
Mm-hmm.
is any real right way to do it. It's just
Right.
gonna be chaotic no matter what. But like my mom expecting me to be me whenever my addiction what's in charge. Like, I guess I guess not under, I mean, which I didn't even quite understand it at the time myself. So it's not like I could expect her to, but I guess like all the policing, like trying to force me to do one thing, like whenever I don't know how to put into words. Like, I guess just expecting me to be able to live with integrity and then getting mad at me whenever I'm in active
Mm-hmm.
addiction. But
Right.
I don't think that it's necessarily anything she did wrong. Like, how is she supposed to know that I'm not the real me?
Right.
So,
Right.
but like, I guess it would have helped more if she probably would have set boundaries earlier. So I guess that's what,
Mm-hmm.
not setting boundaries and not like continuing to enable me is what hurt the
Right.
most.
Yeah, I hear that and recognize that myself because I was trying to always control it, like the policing, like
Yeah.
I'm going to catch you, if you're up to something because I know you're not really telling me the truth right now,
Hmm.
which why aren't you at this point, but it's like that's me becoming a part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's me being, driving him away to go use even faster
Yeah.
and harder. So it's hard because that's why I wanted you to share things with us because as parents, first of all, there's no rule book and no playbook
Yeah.
to follow. And
No.
it does defy our instinct,
Hmm.
of parenting. But parenting active addiction is a whole different set of rules.
Yeah. That.
And I had to learn quickly that the boundaries sooner and not being afraid to make those hard decisions. And they're hard, they're heartbreaking sometimes, but they save lives when you
Yeah.
are able to lovingly make those decisions, which
Yeah.
I'm good friends with Heather's mom and we've shared some notes and I know that she loves you dearly and did such a good job of navigating it,
Yeah.
for you to be able to know that throughout the whole time to know that you were loved is special. So,
I think that one other thing that probably hurt, which again, she wouldn't, I mean, a parent wouldn't know any better than to do this, but she never intentionally tried to guilt or shame me, but like trying to somehow appeal to my maternal instinct, like when I'm not being a good mom to my kids, because I'm obviously using, like, at that point boundaries just needed to be set, but which is the hard thing to do, but not setting the boundaries and then constantly telling me how I'm being a terrible mom, like that kind of guilt tripping and shaming, along with not setting boundaries.
Mm,
Because really,
yeah.
like, I already know that I'm not being a good mom, or I'm too high to know that, which is also a really big problem because I'm just so out of it that I don't realize it and I can't see it. So setting those boundaries and for my own kids whenever I'm not being the mother that I needed to be. So
Yeah.
that's something that helped. It sucked for
Yeah.
me. It really sucked for me, really bad. But her trying to still let me be a mom when I probably should have been separated from that sooner. And that's hard to really say because then I would have been separated from my kids sooner than I was. But I would rather that happen than my kids have to feel like they're not being cared for or loved or looked after or safe or any of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like as a parent we use whatever we can grab, and the thing I learned was is if that means shaming, or guilt tripping, it fed the beast. It didn't do a thing. But something you just said that I wondered about for a long time is John would, be, high, and we would all be in the aftermath of the storm, right? And then he'd be checked out and not remember a lot of what just happened. And so was there ever a point where that would occur where you didn't even know half of what happened? Yeah.
I
And
cussed my mom out on her birthday at her birthday dinner at like the that we would go to eat at this Japanese restaurant every year with our family, and I didn't even remember it. I
wow.
still don't remember doing it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of a kind of a blessing for you guys, but we're out here not going to hide in
Yeah.
that
And that's
blessing.
just terrible, Yeah, it is awful.
Yeah, that is. The thing that one of my very earliest, I think I said this in our last session, or part one of episodes, but I learned that the minute I took anything he did personally, even in early recovery, because I knew he was just, rewiring and still detoxing. His brain was still getting reset, and he'd be irritable and snap at me or something. And I just learned early on, like, don't take anything personally. The minute
Mm,
you do, the addict has control.
yeah.
The addict wins. And I'm at the mercy of him after that. I was just like, not going to take that personally, but it would get hard because he would go for that,
Yeah.
whatever it took,
Yeah.
So, yeah. What do you wish people knew about your journey, or what other people might be going through right now? Like, what do you hope loved ones could know that maybe they don't know?
Hmm. That despite how I may have acted and despite how it may have seemed like I didn't care, because that was something that I would hear a lot, is that you just don't care. You just don't care. If you cared, you would do this. So never once did I ever not care about my family and the people that I was hurting, my kids and my mom and my aunt and my grandma, and and my dad. Never did I once not care, and never did I once like just not think about them. So like, even though I was in active addiction and numbing myself and running away from my problems and running away from everything, I still never completely gave up or did not, and there was never a time where I just did not, that I didn't think that they loved me. I did,
Mm,
like, in case they ever feel like that they didn't do something right or make me feel like I was loved or whatever, I always knew that they loved me, and I did always care. And that's, I think, the biggest and the hardest thing sometimes with addiction is doing these things that go against your morals and your beliefs and your own principles, And all the while knowing that that's what you're doing. I mean, I guess if you're in a blackout, you don't, but knowing that that's what you're doing. And that, so
Mm-hmm.
it's like that, the two things fighting in your head constantly. But I never did. I always knew that I was loved, and I still always cared the entire time I did. Because I
Yeah.
think it's sometimes on for the outside to think, well, if she cared about her kids, she would be doing this, or if she cared about me, she wouldn't steal that from me, or whatever. You know, I
Right.
heard it all the time and said it to myself sometimes. But I always did care. I always did, and I always knew that I was loved.
Do you feel like in the community that that's true for most when you all talk in
Most,
support
yeah,
groups?
I'd say that is the case. I mean, there's the rare person that just seems like an absolute terrible person, but that is not most of the time, that's not the case. I mean,
Right.
that is a very common thing that we all share, that we all feel like it's in the basic text. Like there is a whole, like 2 or 3 pages about this whenever I was going through it recently. And and that's one of the reasons I really enjoy reading the literature, is because I identify so much with it. But that constantly doing things that go against what you believe, that chips away at your soul like it does. And so, yeah, that is something we do care, and we don't want to be doing the things that we're doing. We don't want to be doing them. We're not doing them
Mm-hmm.
because we want to. We didn't not stop using because we just didn't want to stop. That, I think that's why prison helped me at the time that it did, because I did want to stop. I just couldn't. So I was able to take advantage of that opportunity of being finally getting away from it long enough to not wake up sick, and to get on the other side of it, to give myself a chance. Like I was ready for that. I just could not make that decision for myself.
Right.
So
Would you say you always cared about yourself through that, even
no.
underneath the activity?
I guess probably a little bit, because if I didn't, I would have probably just completely given up and died. And well, there were probably periods of time where I had lost myself enough where I know I just didn't care. But deep down, knowing who I am as a person, and the mom that I want to be, and the daughter that I want to be, is probably the only thing. Like during that couple of months where I was just completely lost and missing, not just missing, but also lost from myself. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
intentionally said lost and missing. When I was during that time, the only thing that kept me from just trying to die, I would say, is just knowing that my mom and my girls were out there somewhere wondering where I was. And that is a hard, it sucks to know that. And like feeling that, like as a mom, like my kids wanting to know where their mom is, and why she's not here for my birthday party, or why is she not here for my first day of school, or those things are what kept me probably from dying or
Yeah.
killing myself.
Because sometimes people say like they feel like they don't have a way out.
Yeah, it feels like that a lot. I mean, I have felt like that a lot. So
That's why I was always so grateful for the strength hearing your story, grateful for you, but grateful for John, because it was hard. And I sat through, I think 3 times I sat with John while he detoxed. And I remember when he was 5 years old, he loved strawberry yogurt, and he had strawberry yogurt for breakfast, but then he ended up getting like a stomach virus that day. And so by that evening, when he threw up, it was still strawberry yogurt. And he was like, and he didn't eat that ever again. Like
he still says that. He's told me that
he will
exact
not,
story, and he will.
he will not get near it. And so then when I watched him withdraw, and I said, I'm sitting with him, he's chills, he's got goosebumps, his muscles are contracting, he's got you get nausea, you get diarrhea. It's just awful, awful. It's like the worst of everything you could have at one time is what that's like. It was for him. And I said, well, going through this, knowing that little boy that wouldn't ever, 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 ever eat strawberry yogurt again, I was like, this is going to cure you. And he
Yeah.
said, Mom, if you would go get it, I'd use it right now.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. And I just was like, really, like, really, I couldn't even believe it. And we got in our relationship when I finally just accepted it, and that I was here for you to get help. I was not available except to say I love you and to talk to you. If you were in active addiction, he couldn't come home.
Yeah.
And we had some really good we got to where he was just really forthcoming about that experience. And it's still, when you all talk about it, I hear it, and it's still like shocking to hear some of the things like I didn't know,
Yeah.
It's things I still learn about what it was like. So that's why it was near and dear to my heart. I am friends with lots of moms who have children in recovery or in addiction, or sadly a lot who have lost that battle. So last question for you, and you may have answered this one, but just as a closing thought, if there's a parent or someone that loves and supports an addict or an alcoholic, and they're literally at their breaking point, there were so many times for me where I was just at the breaking point of my own coping mechanisms, where I just called it a breaking point. But what would you want to say to them from that other side?
Set the boundaries that you need to set, and take a step away, but just don't ever stop loving, even if you have to love from a distance. And I understand that. And it is very hard, but you're not doing the person, if you're at your breaking point with your own coping mechanisms, that means that you're probably not going to be very helpful to that person anyway. And at that point, the only thing that you can do is just love the person, but you have to be able to take care of yourself. And driving yourself crazy is not going to help anybody or anything. So, just try to I almost think about it as like when you're a new mom and your baby won't stop crying, and you have to just step away for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You have to just
Mm-hmm.
step away for a few minutes and regroup and take a breath, and just remember that that's your kid. That's your flesh and blood. Hopefully it won't last forever, but unfortunately you don't know. But just don't ever let go of that love. But you just have to step away if you need to, because it is,
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any right or wrong way to handle it. So you're not doing it wrong. If you still love the person and you're still trying, you're not doing it wrong. There's no right way to do it, but that person does love you, and they do care, even though it might not seem like it. They do care a lot. And so just get help if you can. There's support groups out there. There's Al-Anon. There's a lot of different options out there, but yeah, I mean, just take the time that you need and set the boundaries that you need to for yourself. And
Yeah.
then just never give up hope.
Yeah.
Even if you can't talk to the person, if you can at least pray for them,
Mm-hmm.
putting that love out to God and just trusting that God has a plan, and that suffering will serve a purpose at some point, and that
Yeah.
there is always growth. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. So, yeah, there's a lot of beauty in pain, unfortunately, but
There really is. And a lot, I look at that and think some of our most beautiful music was written from pain, and some of our most beautiful poetry, was written from people's pain, and it opens our heart and it connects us, in humanity, we can relate in so many ways. So there is beauty in that. And I do think that our pain will one day birth our purpose if we allow it, but we have to heal from it, for that to happen. So, yeah. And, getting help that was my thing when I found myself sucked back into the vortex of it. And it's like, first I started like, okay, well, I'll drive you to treatment, because I wanted him to go to outpatient treatment, and I'll pick you back up. And then it was, I'm going to make sure he gets to court on time. And so I'm like adjusting my schedule and turning my life upside down, trying to make sure
mhm.
that he could get to where he needed to go. And thinking he wouldn't be able to unless I did, or he wouldn't go unless I took him. And I just made it mine all the time. And then I would see that he was still actively using and go, why am I turning my life inside out? He said, I didn't ask you to.
Yeah.
And sometimes he would say things, and I just would have to stop and go, you're right. I did this again. This was me overstepping and trying to control. And I would have to say, it's time for you to figure it out. I got to go figure me out. I love you, but I gotta have a break. And he always respected that. That was one of the things he always knew. And he never wanted me to not take care of myself. He never asked me to do anything for him. It was always me, unless he was like using me to use, he would ask, but he never really did. And I just let myself get over involved, for far too long. So like you said, there's no wrong way to do it. It's not we didn't cause it. We cannot control it. No. Boy, did I try. And it doesn't help you all, it sounds like, to watch us implode.
Yeah.
To watch us suffer. You're already suffering. And then to see us suffering because of it probably doesn't help your mental health at all. Yeah. So it's understanding that. And it's really learning to practice good self-care and healthy boundaries is the best. And that's what that's your job as the person who loves an addict or an alcoholic. So gosh, Heather, thank you so much for these two podcast interviews. I know that people that are going to listen to this are going to grow and learn and get at least one, if not, a dozen insights that I hope serve them and help them. And again, I'm so grateful for you just being in my life and being in John's life, and the two of you loving each other and figuring it out, still figuring all this out. And, you're such a good mom. You're just an amazing mom. And I love watching you be a mom to your kids, because you're so committed to that and to them. And so I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. John is, you guys did such a good job with him, and it really shows. He is such a loving and caring person, and y'all welcomed me into your family, and it's been a blessing, really. And I'm so grateful to be a part of your family.
Well, we are grateful you are too. And we're stuck with each other, I guess. Yeah. So, well, thank you again. And for those listening, I want to pull up, there is a drug helpline. It's called SAMHSA hotline, 1-800-662-HELP or 1-800-662 4357 for those that don't have to look at the little letters to figure out the phone number. 800-662-4357. It's a free and confidential resource operating 24/7, offering treatment referrals and support. It's accessible to anyone, whether you're reaching out for yourself or someone else. So it's a resource that's out there. There's many more. Heather mentioned going to Al-Anon. It's the people that you learn so much from, Al-Anon principles, steps, learning how to let go of control, learning your own step work. I think we need something to do. And for me, that gave me something to do. Like, let me learn and focus then on me in a way that was relevant. And so if you haven't done that, I recommend that as well. So, I just hope that this was helpful to those of you listening. I thank you for tuning into our little show here. And I also hope that you will share these episodes, share it with anybody. They won't be offended if you offer it with love. Always with the intention. If you're not sure, one of the ways that I do it is, hey, I heard something today and I thought of you. Would it be okay for me to share it? And then they usually want to know, because they'll be curious what you heard. So once you get that permission, then please share this, because you just never know how it will help someone. And we have to take the stigma away. We have to take the shame off of this journey. It's very isolating. It can be very isolating. It's so hard to understand, both as a parent, but as a friend watching a parent. And you're like, your mom, like you said, your mom's friends were like, you just need to give up on her, because how many times can you go through this? And, we don't give up. We just don't give up. And we try to convince ourselves we can maybe, but I don't think any mom ever really fully did find a way to do that and not just numb out him or herself, a parent, or I'm not eliminating a dad's experience. I'm just reflecting on it because I'm a mom too. So you all reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear if this was helpful for you. And again, give us a review. That helps our little podcast get seen. And so that would be greatly appreciated. And in every ending, a new beginning is already blooming, and it's important to trust your season. So I'll sign off, as always, with love. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you found a spark of wisdom to carry with you, and maybe even a deeper invitation to heal and grow and transform through your own beautiful story. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone who could use encouragement. And if so, I hope you will share it with them. If you'd like to learn more about working with me or attending one of my healing retreats, coaching programs, and other offerings, you can visit my website at jennyaiello.com or email me directly at jenny@jaiello.com. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If today's episode touched you, it would mean the world if you would leave a review or share it with someone who might need it, or just reach out and let me know how it landed for you. I'd love to hear from you. I'm building something special here. Real stories, real life, real connection. One episode, one heart, and one story at a time. As always, with love. Oh, and this is the legal message, but mostly a message from my heart. And I just need to share this with you right now. Please know this podcast is offered solely for educational and entertainment purposes. If you find yourself triggered due to anything that was shared in this podcast, please seek professional help. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health services. While I am a professional life coach, I am not a psychotherapist, nor am I a mental health clinician. So if you are struggling emotionally, please seek help, because you matter, you are important, and most of all, you are worthy of doing this work, the work that leads you to a better and healthier place. Okay? All right. Thank you. And please always make enough time to take care of yourself, and do so with love.